the next, I mean, there's a few questions wanted to ask you, but you answered them in the first question anyway. Thank you for that. You saved me a lot of time. Digital gold. Bitcoin is digital gold. What do you mean? What are you trying to explain here? Like, do you think, because obviously Bitcoin has increased much more than gold in the last few years in that, but in the long term, can people actually compare gold with Bitcoin?
Let's start with your life savings. You have all the money you've saved your entire life. It's a stack of money. It's sitting in the corner, however much money you have. And what you'd like to do is you'd like to keep it. So in the 19th century, you would have bought gold with it. Gold was the long-term store of value. It was a form of property, but it was mobile. You know, another thing you could do with it is you could buy land with it.
Yeah.
Another thing you could do is you could buy a building. Another thing you could do with it is you could buy livestock, a bunch of cattle or horses.
Yeah.
You could buy a bunch of corn. You could buy a bunch of oil, or you could buy, all of those are forms of property. So gold is, for thousands of years, thought of as a long-term mobile or portable, semi-portable. It's portable for someone with, $50,000 worth of gold. If it's $50 million worth of gold, it starts to be pretty heavy, and then you can't move it around. Bitcoin can be thought of as digital gold, or more generally digital property, or most generally digital energy. And bear with me there. So I take my money and I convert it into gold, and I have a pile of gold bars. The good thing is it's hard to make any more. The bad thing is it's heavy, and someone can put a gun to my head, shoot me, and take my gold bars. The other bad thing about gold is the gold miners make more gold. So the half-life of economic energy of your life force stored in gold is about 30 years. Every 30 years, the gold supply is going to double. And in 100 years, it's going to double and double and double again. So you're definitely going to lose 85% of your wealth over 100 years, unless some criminal steals your gold or the government seizes your gold. And of course, over 100 years, 95% of the time, someone's going to steal your gold. That's what happened in the 20th century. So the problem with gold is someone will steal it, or it'll get debased by gold miners, and it's hard to handle. Digital gold is I blink my eyes, I cast a spell, and now I dematerialize the blocks of gold. $1 million worth of gold becomes $1 million worth of virtual gold, and I tie it into my private keys. So now the advantage is, if you shoot me in the head, you don't get it.
Yeah.
If someone's coming to my door to kick down the door and arrest me, I send it halfway around the world. If I want to hold it 100 years, it doesn't debase, 2% a year. You've still got 100% of what you had 100 years later. The half-life of Bitcoin is forever. The half-life of gold is 30 years. So one of them is durable. The other thing is I can move it to any of 100,000 counterparties anywhere in the world at the speed of light. So if you think of it as digital gold, you're like, well, it's safer, more secure, indestructible, and without any mass, so easy for me to move around. And that makes it more valuable than gold. If gold is worth $10 trillion in the world, then digital gold must be worth 20 trillion. But bear with me. It's important that we don't stop there. I mean, if I just gave you virtual gold versus $1 billion of real gold is 30,000 pounds. $1 billion of Bitcoin is 0 pounds, and I can move it with my finger, right? Speed of light.
Yeah.
You can see why it's better. But if we start to think of it as digital property, what if I took that $1 billion of gold and I made it $1 billion of buildings, and I bought up all the buildings in Istanbul?
Yeah.
Okay, now I own property.
I wish.
Okay, now why is that better? Well, in one way it's better because I can rent the land, or I can rent the building and generate yield on it. So maybe I buy up houses, maybe I buy up warehouses. I have some property with some income stream. That's the good. The bad part about it is the maintenance fee. I got to paint it. An earthquake might knock it down. It might burn. I get taxed on it, property tax. And if I have to leave the country, I can't move the $1 billion of buildings out of Istanbul. So it's not portable. So on having said all that, most people that store their wealth and stay wealthy, they don't do it with gold. The rich families in the world do it with property. They own blocks of New York City. They probably the rich people in Turkey, they own a lot of buildings and a lot of land, right? You never met a rich person that didn't own buildings and land, right? No. So it turns out that, if gold is a $10 trillion market, property is more like a $250 trillion market. And if you think of Bitcoin not as a digital pallet of gold, but a digital hotel, I create a hotel with 1,000 rooms and I snap my fingers and now it's a virtual hotel in Istanbul and it's only 50% occupied. So I take half the rooms and I send them off to Paris and London and New York, and now it's 100% occupied. And I rent them out by the night. And then I realize, well, the room rate in New York is 5x what it is in Istanbul. So I send them all to New York, and now it's 500% occupied. And then I realize that people only sleep in the room about a third of the time, and 16 hours a day, the room is empty. So I start renting the room by the room hour. And now it goes to 1,200% occupied. And then I have a little computer that finds out that in Tokyo, during the Tokyo Olympics, room rates quadruple again. And so I ship the rooms in the hotel by the hour, and it becomes 3,000% occupied. And my profitability goes up by a factor of 50. And then I go, well, what if I just rent out the room by the minute? And so now I have a virtual hotel, and I'm renting out room minutes everywhere in the world. Okay. And that's really interesting property. Now, at some point, if I push that analogy to the extreme, if I can decompose the property every minute and recompose it and send it out in 100,000 pieces to the world and fetch it back, and there's no maintenance cost and there's no degradation, my property has become energy, right? Einstein said, you can neither destroy or create energy. Energy becomes matter. Matter becomes energy, right? Quantum theory of light versus versus light rays and waves, right? What you have is property is one form of energy, and money is another form of energy. True. And energy is the big idea. But now let me come back to what is Bitcoin. Well, if Bitcoin is just digital gold, then it's $1 billion slab of gold, and it must be worth more than gold. So instead of a $10 trillion market, it's a $20 trillion market. But if Bitcoin is property, then it replaces everybody's second home and all their commercial real estate and all the land they invested in to store their life savings. And now it's not a $20 trillion thing, it's a $100 trillion thing. And if it's energy is same as money. Money is half of everything. Energy is, it's like the way the economy works is you provide me with a product, an iPhone or service, a good or a service, or you give me property, a house, or you give me a party, or you give me a car, right? And so I'm buying those with money. And the economy is using the money to backhaul the energy to convert it back into matter. And what is service? Service is work. Work, matter becomes energy. And they go back and forth. And if you think about Bitcoin like that, you realize that, the obvious thing is it becomes digital gold. And the next thing is it becomes digital property. And finally, it becomes digital energy. And digital energy is money, but it's so much more powerful than the concept of money or currency. People have in their head these ideas of money and currency full of all sorts of political beliefs and biases. So I think if you thought of it as just pure digital energy, at that point you realize, well, that's worth $500 trillion. True. Right? That's worth half of everything in the world, because because in order to exchange the work, the services, the products, or the properties with each other, in order to cooperate, you have to at some point convert it into money/energy and convert it back again.
I think